as a financial advisor, one of the things I often hear from people is, I know I'm behind on my savings. I don't have enough saved, but it's not a problem because I'll just work an extra 5 years, an extra 7 years. Instead of retiring at 65, I'm going to retire at 70. And I just want to share a caution because, believe it or not, almost half of all Americans do not get to choose when they retire. They are retired. Their employer retires them, or a family situation causes them to retire before they wanted to retire. So just because you might want to work to 67, 70, 75, whatever it is, not all of us get to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of us do not get to choose when we retire. So if that is a piece of your retirement savings, I want you to be super careful. There's multiple studies that have been done where they ask people, at what age do you think you will retire? And the older the survey participants are, the older it is until they'll be able to retire. So for instance, the younger generations, people in their 20s and 30s, say, I'll be able to retire at 62 or 63. But as you get older, as you get into the boomer generation, the Gen X generation, folks like that are 40, 50, or approaching 60, the reality starts to set in and people realize they have not saved enough and they're gonna have to work longer, but that can be a super risky strategy. So what do you do if you find yourself in that situation? I think there's a couple things, right? Saving money is not fun. That means that we are postponing gratification that we could have today for tomorrow. And the average American does not save enough money. In fact, half of all boomers report, and boomers, the youngest boomers are turning 60 as I record this year. So half of all boomers say that they have no retirement savings. The Wall Street Journal did a report looking at the survey of consumer finance that's sponsored by the Federal Reserve. And 80% of all people report having less than $100,000 saved. And if you have $100,000 saved, good for you, that's a good thing. And I want you to feel good about that. It's hard to save $100,000. In fact, the first $100,000 is the hardest to save. But if you think about retirement, it's going to be better than nothing, but it's likely not going to be sufficient. So what do? I think the first thing we need to do is find a way to start saving, however small it might be. I want you to set a goal. I want you to think about a goal of 20% of your take-home pay, saving 20% of your take-home pay. And I know most of us are far from that, and it seems impossible to get there. But let me share with you 2 ways that you can get there if you find yourself in a situation where you're not saving enough. The first way is you rip the Band-Aid off. It's the harder approach. The second approach is the easier approach. In fact, let me start with the easier approach. It's going to take longer to get there, but it feels less sacrificial. And that is simply every time you get a promotion, every time you change jobs and make more money, or you get a raise at work, half of that money goes to your future self, and half of that raise or promotion, the extra money, goes to your current self. So we save half of that, and we spend half of that. We allow ourselves to spend half of that. And over time, you'll start building up your savings. Eventually you'll be at 10%, then 15%, and eventually, it may take a decade, it could take a long time, you could be at 20%. So that's the slow path. And you know, if you're 20 years old, that's a great strategy. If you're 50 and you find yourself where you haven't saved any money for retirement, or you need to catch up, you know, the rip the Band-Aid off might be something that you want to think about. And that's what I call the 50, 30, 20 rule. And stay with me because I'm going to share the next important 3 steps to this after you start saving 20%. But let's talk about the 50-30-20 rule. The 50-30-20 says you strive to keep your necessary spending, your needs, things like your rent or your mortgage payment, things like putting gasoline in your car, things like your car payment, groceries, paying your utility bill, the needs, what it takes to live, actually just what it takes, and try to keep that to 50%, 50% of your after-tax take-home pay. Next, look at your wants, the things we want to do, going out to eat, taking a nice vacation, ordering things online that we, do we really need a 5th pair of shoes? Yes, it would be nice. Or a 10th pair? Yes, it would be nice. Do we really need all those cardboard boxes coming to our home every day? Many of us could do with half of those cardboard boxes or none of those cardboard boxes showing up. So our wants, try to limit that to 30% of your after-tax take-home pay. And if we do that, that leaves 20% for savings. And most of us can do anything for 30 days. So if you've never tried this, I encourage you to take a 30-day challenge and try it and see if it feels sacrificial. You might be surprised, it may not feel sacrificial at all. So that's the hard part, is actually saving the money. But next, what I want you to think about is it's not enough to save, you also have to invest that money. We have to beat inflation over time. This is not financial advice. I don't know your situation, and I encourage you to work with a professional that does know your situation. But I want you to think about, what is risk? Is risk the volatility that we see the stock market going up and down? Or is risk the likelihood that we'll never achieve our goal, a realistic goal? And if that warm and cozy feeling that we get putting our money in an FDIC insured bank account, that comes at a cost. And the cost is usually you're going to be making less than inflation. And we've all heard the power of compounding. And over time, your money starts working harder for you than you did for it. But the reality is the power of compounding only works if you're beating inflation. If you're not beating inflation, every year compounding is working against you. You're getting further and further behind from the purchasing power. So think about what the right investment strategy is for you. Again, I highly encourage you to work with a financial advisor, preferably somebody that's a fiduciary to you. They put your needs in front of their own 100% of the time, and figure out what the right investment strategy is for you over the long term. So first we save, then we invest, and the third one is we start as early as we can. Now, if you're 50 years old, the days of being able to start saving our money when we're 16 are behind us. But it's like that old adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's the same thing with saving. So I want you to think about having a sense of urgency for this. I want you to think about what your future life could look like when you have that financial security, when you have that financial independence. It wasn't that long ago that many of us had many Americans had 3 legs to their retirement stool. They had or foundation to their retirement. They had a pension at work, they had Social Security, and then they had their retirement savings. And retirement savings is such an important piece of this for us, because few of us get a pension anymore. So we want to be thinking about that. And we also want to be thinking about reaching our goal as soon as possible, because unfortunately, if we're not careful, the youth of our senior years are going to pass by us quickly. The youngest when we're the most healthiest and most active. And I want you to squeeze all the juice you can out of the youth of your senior years. And always remember that when we're 60 years old, most of us likely have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of us. If you found this video helpful, I think you'll find this video helpful as well. It talks about how much people spend in retirement. It's the average income for retirees in America.